BBC T's Bob Fischer here at 95 FM, DAB, online, Freeview 722. And yes, the Great Exhibition of the North is taking place all summer. It's a celebration of the north of England's pioneering spirit. There are exhibitions and live performances aplenty, including the Great Northern Songbook, which is coming to Sage in Gateshead this Saturday. A host of northeastern performers will all be singing their favourite northern songs. Taking part in this is Maximo Park's own Paul Smith, who's with me on the line. How are you, sir?
I'm good. How are you, Bob?
I'm all right, thank you. Yeah, no, thank you for doing this taking a break from the World Cup, I imagine. Are you enjoying it?
I am, yeah. I've done interviews at half time. That's how organised I am. No joke. But yeah, I've managed to watch every game except the opening ceremony when I had to do some rehearsing for one of the gigs that's coming up. I'm playing with Rachel Unthank from the folk group The Unthanks as well. Yeah. On July the 1st at the Sage as part of Lauren Laverne's Great Northern soundtrack. So
fantastic.
It's all, completely new world for me, even though I've enjoyed a lot of folk music.
Yeah.
Since my youth. I've never really been associated with that world, so we're doing a brand new collaboration which needs extra rehearsing, and so that's what I was doing, and I was gutted if it would have been a little bit later. It was Russia putting it on at a time that suits them. What about the global audience, Russia?
Exactly, yeah. What about northeastern musicians that have to collaborate on multi-genre projects? Yeah,
exactly.
Think about them. Why don't you, Vladimir Putin?
That's
Good
it.
Grief.
That's the biggest crime he's been labelled with yet.
I'm sure. Oh no, this sounds terrific. So you really are throwing yourself into the Great Exhibition of the North then. How is that 3 parts of the Great Exhibition of the North that you're going to be involved with? Is that, did I stick that on the list? Or is it more than that?
Let's go for a quartet. I'm actually DJing for kids and family on the day of the gig that I've got with Rachel Unthank. So on the 1st of July, on a Sunday morning at 10:30, I'm putting on the parental guidance party, which just for fun. And I like to play records when I can, and if people want to come and listen to them, that's good.
Yeah.
And the Sage asked me if I would put something on, because I actually did a gig for an organisation up in Newcastle called Chalk, who put on adult-friendly family activities, so that the adults aren't just numbed out of their mind by somebody with a ukulele. It's actually they put on bands and at a reasonable volume and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I just did a very, very low-key solo thing, and I think events like that are becoming more and more commonplace. So I was asked, probably off the back of that, to come and spin some tunes, again based on the idea of northern songs.
Yeah.
So I'll be playing anything that has a connection to the north in some way that you can dance to, and you can bring your kids for a couple of hours on a Sunday morning at the Sage Gateshead. So that's the 4th of it, and it's free as well, I think, in the concourse area of the beautiful Sage Gateshead. So that's the 4th part of my involvement with the Great Exhibition of the North. So
right, well, funnily enough, I had that on my list anyway, so I'm trying to work out what the other one is now. Hang on, this is going to get really complicated here, isn't it?
Well, the other one is the other one is the biggest of them all in some ways. I don't treat any of them like that. They're all equal to me. But we're actually playing the opening night on the Friday.
Got you.
Yes, I will be floating down the Tyne apparently on the Sir Bobby Robson.
Right.
And playing with Maximo Park. So Maximo Park launched the whole thing.
Yes.
And then, as we finish our 20-minute set, a specially commissioned song that we've written for the exhibition will be synced up to a huge 80-foot water feature in the middle of the Tyne, which is as ludicrous as it sounds. And we've collaborated with the Royal Northern Sinfonia at the Sage as well. They said, if you write this song, you can use the orchestra here. And so for us, it was a big opportunity to do something more, I suppose, like Scott Walker, 60s Scott, where it's kind of sweeping romantic song, which is quite different from us for us sonically, but it kind of draws on very similar lyrical territory, and it's still emotionally led and looking at things that have happened in my life that are hopefully universal and that people can connect to. And so we've written a new song called North by Northeast that is going to be the first of 3 new commissions that will be showcasing this water feature on the Tyne, and it's going to be pretty huge, I have to say, in statistically speaking.
Oh, I love Scott Walker's work, with a passion that goes beyond the human. So I can't wait to hear this.
Well, I've bigged it up too much now.
No. If anybody can be Billingham's answer to Scott Walker, Mr. Smith, I think it's you.
All right, like a Scott Walker B-side. As if he was from Teesside, which sounds like a lyric.
Oh, it does, yeah. A Teesside, B-side. Why has nobody done that before? Magnificent. All right, and have you actually rehearsed this yet with the Northern Sinfonia?
Well, we're not going to play it on the night because it would be too complicated.
Okay.
It's just going to get piped in, which is a safer bet, I have to say. So we're going to play our usual rock show, although it will be floating and mobile, so that anything can happen. But yeah, we've done a song, Kate Rusby and a band called Dark Star from Sheffield, I think they're from. We've all collaborated with the orchestra, and they'll have those will be the kind of 3 finale moments to this opening ceremony that's going on.
Paul Smith from Maximo Park here on BBC Tees. Tons more still to come from my chat with Paul. Got quite a few more tracks to drop in as well. Listening to a long chat that I had yesterday with Paul Smith, frontman with Maximo Park. So, we have established that Maximo Park are playing on the Sir Bobby Robson on the boat on the Tyne as part of the opening ceremony of the Great Exhibition of the North. That's on Friday. And then the following day, Paul is a guest vocalist at the Great Northern Songbook, singing, Great Northern songs, as chosen by the public, with Sunderland's own field music as the backing band. So, I suggested that would be Saturday.
It is.
Yes.
The 23rd, and field music being the house band, and myself, Catherine Williams, we've got Pauline Murray and Ross from the Futureheads, Ross Millard.
Yeah.
We've got a gospel choir. It should be a pretty weird evening, if nothing else.
I've seen it described as an all-star karaoke night. Is that a fair description, do you think?
I think so. I think the music, the backing band might be of a slightly higher calibre than some of the karaoke tunes that I've heard piped out of various places. But you never know. It could be field music's moment where they go full karaoke. I think there's a few very slick pop numbers that have been chosen by the Great Northern public as their favourite Northern songs. So they'll be in there as well, alongside some slightly obscure things that you or I might like, Bob, and a few more big hitters as well. And you never know, there might be a Maximo Park song.
Oh, cheeky! I hope that you're not doing that. Give that to Pauline Murray from Penetration to do.
Well, that was the original. The original idea was that, because we'd all had songs chosen within the list that had been submitted by the public, that we would somebody else would sing one of our songs. But I think the powers that be have demanded a little bit of it's like something that actually is a song by one of us, sung by us.
Okay.
So I don't know. I'm not sure what the logic is, but I'll trust their valued opinion.
Yeah, these people know about these things. That's what
exactly.
I'm always assured. Yes. So essentially, the general public have voted on their favourite songs by Northern artists, and field music are going to be the house band for the evening, and you lot are going to have a crack at. I mean, did you get a say in the other song, the non-Maximo Park stuff?
Absolutely.
That you're doing. You could pick one.
Oh yes, yeah. There was stuff on the list that I was very drawn to. So I've got one that's, I would say, slightly obscure in certainly to modern audiences.
Okay.
But I know that you're a big fan of this person.
Oh really?
So I don't want to let the cat out the bag, but it's an interesting Yorkshire chanson artist.
Oh, I know.
Of which there's only one. So some people out there will go, oh yeah, and other people will go, that is what you want about.
Are we not allowed to say? Does this have to be
Well, this is it.
like a top secret thing? But lots of my listeners will undoubtedly know exactly who we're talking about.
Well, this is it.
Now.
Good. I like surprises.
Okay, no, that's fine. Yeah.
But I did see that on Facebook that David Brewis from Field Music had revealed that he was learning every little thing she does is magic by the Police.
So if he can come out there and tell people.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say this. I've always had a big affection for the work of Prefab Sprout. Let's just say that.
I know you have, yes.
So yeah, one of the songs is said obscure cult artist that we both like.
Yes.
And the other one, it may be something by Prefab Sprout.
Didn't you go to interview Paddy McAloon at one point?
I did. He's a really nice guy and really interesting guy as well.
Yeah.
Which, people say never meet your heroes, and he was the opposite of that. He let me look in his notebook, which was really unusual as well. I took a little photograph of some notes that he'd made and just, had a total insight into the way that he works. And he's got a real reputation as an eccentric. Yeah. And I think in some ways that's totally valid because he is a one-off and nobody's like him. But then on the other hand, he's, the reasons people think he's unusual, that he's quite a specific guy. He has specific wishes for his music. He's an idiosyncratic songwriter. But those are perfectly justifiable things in my opinion. So yeah, I went to a little hotel in Durham to meet him because he's still lives in County Durham, I think. Yeah. And yeah, what a total dream come true. Something that I would never, when I was listening to Prefab Sprout when I was 17, listening to A Life of Surprises, the greatest hits, and then eventually going back through their back catalogue and getting all of the records, just to even meet him, never mind to spend an hour or whatever with the guy talking about his work. It was brilliant.
How did it feel when you actually, because I've met a few of my heroes in the course of doing this job, and I've met a couple of my heroes that are considered to be reclusive as well, in the way that Paddy McAloon of Prefab Sprout, I think, has that reputation now. Can you talk us through the actual moment that you met him? Because I found it's a moment that you can't prepare for at all. Did you open the door? Did he open the door? How did it work?
Well, I think his press agent or his manager was there, or maybe it was. I think it was another journalist. I say another journalist, not that I'm one, but an actual journalist was there, and they'd just finished interviewing him and were on their way out. Okay. And I opened the door, and he's got this huge beard, big grey-white beard at the moment, and he just, he looks like there's. You project a lot of things onto people that you have preconceptions about, and I've watched a lot of footage of him talking on YouTube and whatever, and read a lot of his interviews. So it's when you meet somebody who you've researched and had this kind of kinship with on an artistic level, when you meet those people, you can't help but have all of those things in your mind, and it's almost like a kind of hyper real moment because this imagined thing comes to life, and that's quite an unusual aspect of what I do. When I met Brian Ferry when we were doing the Culture Show on BBC Two. Yeah. And I was wearing a Brian Ferry badge, which, I knew he was going to be on the show. I didn't necessarily think that I would meet him, but it was just my little reference. It was him in Roxy Music with a sweater on or whatever. Yeah. And just meeting him, a very interesting character, and I try not to have too many expectations of people. I try and realize what they are and that they're just human. They might be having a bad day. Yeah. I've certainly, some people who like our band have met me and probably thought I was an idiot, but I always try and
not at all.
But I always try and be nice, and even, people come up to me and go, all right, Paul. And I think, where do I know you from? I'm not sure who you are. Yeah. And then I realised that it's somebody who likes our music, and they already feel that they know me. And I'm used to that now after 13 or 14 years of that happening. But it's still quite unusual. So I'm aware that they might be having that same experience, and that I should be not reverent, because we're all just people, and putting people on pedestals is not the answer to these situations, but also just kind of try and allow them to move into the conversation. And that's something that I do, because I'm also hosting the Penguin Books podcast at the moment. So
oh yes, of course, yeah.
I meet a lot of different authors, who've sold millions and millions of books, and I spoke to Malcolm Gladwell, who I think is possibly the biggest selling non-fiction author in the world at the moment.
Right.
And I've read all of his books as the research for doing the podcast. And he does this stuff day in, day out, and he doesn't know who he's going to get on the end of the conversation. And so you have to just kind of warm people up and allow them to feel like they can speak to you and have a conversation, a normal conversation. So it was kind of like that with Paddy McAlooney. I think he was sat in a corner of like a hotel bar on an afternoon, so there's hardly anybody in, and he was just very generous with his time. And as I say, he had his notebook there. At the end, I whipped out a couple of records for him to sign, and I allowed myself to at the end to just say, I absolutely love Prefab Sprout. I love your writing. I love your solo record that you did, I Troll the Megahertz, which is a truly unusual, underrated cult classic. And so for me that was brilliant.
We're in the middle of listening to my long chat with Paul Smith, frontman with Maximo Park. Paul is doing an absolute ton of stuff at the Great Exhibition of the North, which is launched this Friday. Well, there was one question about Paul's meeting with Brian Ferry that was weighing on my mind. Did Brian Ferry spot that you were wearing a Brian Ferry badge?
He did, and I said, I kind of confessed. I said, "Look, I'm wearing a badge. I'm wearing a badge with your face on," and tried not to get all Alan Partridge about this, where Alan Partridge comes face to face with his superfan.
You don't want to be Jed Maxwell, do you, in these situations?
And he went, "Oh, I was much better looking then." So he was, he gave the perfect response, and I was like, "Well, you're not doing too badly, Brian."
I thought my usual tactic is, because you don't want to steam in like with. I know the temptation is to steam in with like everything you've ever wanted to say to them ever, and try and do that in the space of 20 seconds. Oh,
absolutely.
I love your album, that one, this one, that you did this stuff. I think the trick is to kind of. Don't do that. Have a normal conversation. Ask them about their day and where they've been and what they've been doing. But at some point, drop in quite early a reference to something quite obscure that they've done that shows that you are actually a proper fan.
Is that what you're doing to me now, Bob?
That's what I've done to you every single time I've spoken to you, Mr. Smith.
Are you wearing a Paul Smith face mask right now?
No, I've got a big tattoo of you all over my chest.
Right, I'm just backing away from the microphone.
Weird now, Paul. I'm sorry. No, it's interesting to hear, talking about like northeastern musical legends like Paddy McAloon, like Brian Ferry, and that you're kind of, you're paying tribute to these guys in this performance. Was there a particular frisson when you were growing up in seeing northeastern performers on TV? Like, obviously Prefab Sprout were a big band for you. I remember seeing a band called the Cane Gang as well on Top of the Pops when I was 11, who were from County Durham. And he's like, I'd never seen a northeastern band on Top of the Pops before. It seemed to mean something.
Yeah, for me, it sort of went over my head. Really, I didn't know where Prefab Sprout were from.
Right.
I kind of did the research afterwards, and then found out that there was this. From Langley Park to Memphis Records. Langley Park's in Durham, but as somebody from Billingham, I had absolutely no idea. Whereas when I'm in Newcastle, I see buses with Langley Park written on the top, and it just makes me think of this, massive pop record. And I think that's one of the brilliant things about Prefab Sprout, that you can have those strange little reference points in there in this kind of glossy pop that they eventually developed with Thomas Dolby co-producing and all of that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, I was. It felt like a bit of a cultural wasteland in terms of seeing stuff on the TV that was certainly from Teesside. There was, my dad would always say, "Oh yeah, there's a guy Paul Smith, same name as you, plays for the did Nelly the Elephant, and he was on Top of the Pops, and plays with Jimmy Nail. And sure enough, when I got my Jimmy Nail record, I looked at the credits, and there was Paul Smith on the drums. And so, you know, you semi-aware of certain things, but in terms of my generation, I couldn't really see too much going on. I remember when you see Dubstar or something like that, and they were from Newcastle, and I hadn't moved up to Newcastle at that point. And then when I did move up there to be a student and stayed there ever since, it still felt like the bands were kind of imitating, you know, Oasis and things like that. You know, very looking to other places instead of people like Brian Ferry or Prefab Sprout, and even Pet Shop Boys. You know, that's almost the kind of their initial music is almost about that transition from being from somewhere up north and then travelling down to London.
And completely, yeah. It's almost starstruck, isn't it? Those early Pet Shop Boys singles. Yeah, and that's part of their story, and obviously, you know, the Northeast and Newcastle is in there, and the same with something like the Police or Sting. You know, he references back to his past, and you know, but you wouldn't say, oh right, that sounds like something from the Northeast. You can't really tell with accents so much. And I think when we first started, a lot of people said, whoa, you're laying it on a bit thick. Are you just putting that accent on when you sing? And I just found it unusual, and I didn't really think about it until I got asked. And then I looked back at when I was growing up, thinking, well, I don't suppose there were too many voices that would sound like me or would have a Teesside accent or anything like that. And so I feel like I'm getting away from the point a little bit, but something like this all-star Northeast band that we're putting on Saturday night is almost saying, hey, look, you know, this is what we've got here. We do have people from the region like Pauline Murray who've, you know, spanned the generations and done different things and remained based in the Northeast. And perhaps that's one of the reasons why they're not trumpeted elsewhere, because they are still seen as provincial or out of the way or under the radar. And so it's become quite important to me to remain based in the Northeast, and you know, I wouldn't say, hey, everybody, you should like Maximo Park or like any of my music, but it does go to show that you can make international ripples and still have, you know, top 20 records like we did last year. You know, we've had a run of albums in the charts, and when I was a kid, I suppose I didn't see that when I was young, sort of 95, when I was like 16 or something, through to when ourselves and the Future Heads and field music broke through on a national level. And so to me it was a little bit like, right, I don't see this happening, so let's draw on some of these older influences like Roxy Music and make some art pop. Let's do something that has that is romantic but romanticizes our region and talks about the things that we're surrounded by, and off you go. You've warmed the cockles of my heart here. This is a beautiful thing, Mr. Smith. And I think the really nice thing, like your influence has filtered through now as well. You know, I work with teenage bands from Teesside, you know, as part of the introducing stuff that I do. Who, like, for them, like, the music scene has always been as thriving as it is now, and I think the northeastern music scene is thriving, and Teesside is an absolute hotbed of talent, more so than, you know, it's been for a long, long time. But I sort of explained to them that, you know, when I was a teenager on Teesside, there was about 6 bands on Teesside and nowhere to play. So I think, like, you know, people like yourself with Maximo Park and the Future Heads, you know, and all the others that you've mentioned, you've opened that up a little bit, I think.
Well, it's nice to know. I think you just have to trust in yourself and believe that what you're doing is the right thing. And for us, a lot of people did say, "Why aren't you in London?" You know.
Yeah.
And obviously, I've seen lots of London bands get very good reviews when they're and fade into obscurity soon after.
Yes.
But they're mates with the journalists, or they're playing the gigs in the hot new places. And I think you don't want to ever feel like you've got a chip on your shoulder. You know, I'm proud to be from where I'm from. When I was younger, that you would see I think, bands like Shrug on Teesside, again, a pretty unusual band, influenced by stuff like The Fall and another great northern band from the other side of the country. But yeah, I just, when I was growing up, if you were in a band, it meant you had you were either pretend to be the Doors or pretend to be Paul Weller or Oasis, and there weren't many places that I would know to go when I was younger. And so I suppose I could never say, well, it was a bit thin on the ground when I was growing up in Teesside, because I moved to Newcastle, to go to university, and became aware of lots more things anyway. But I would look at the music papers, the Melody Maker and the NME, and look in the back and see where bands were playing and see all of the adverts, and they virtually always missed out Middlesbrough. Or I wasn't expecting them to come to Billingham, but I would go to the arena and the town hall and watch The Odd Thing, Teenage Fan Club, bands like that, which was incredible. Watching them play in what I consider my town. But I would look and go, well, I need to, when I go to university in Newcastle, I'll be able to see all these bands at the Riverside, and I'll be able to see bands at the City Hall or whatever. And sure enough, it's that is the case. And even then, looking at it now, not many bands come to Newcastle compared to the rest of the country. So it's there is, you've got to get on with it yourself, I suppose. That was the ethos that we had, just put our own record out, get 500 slabs of red vinyl that we'd recorded at home out there. And I think people can see that it's not as hard as it was made out to be. And I think, if anything, people can look at us and go, well, you don't have to go anywhere, you can stay on Teesside and be a musician, and you can, you need a bit of luck, and you need somebody to help you along the way in loads of different ways, and you've got to have the material and all that kind of stuff. But you don't have to go down the received route.
Paul Smith from Maximo Park is doing loads of stuff at the Great Exhibition of the North. Maximo Park themselves playing the launch on Friday on a boat on the River Tyne. He is doing the Great Northern Songbook on Saturday, singing songs with northern connections with an all-star cast. The whole lot is on the Great Exhibition of the North website. I'll give you the address out at the end of this. Let's go back to my chat with Paul Doe, and here we go. You're back at Sage in September as well with the is that with field music and the Northern Sinfonia?
It is. We're blowing our own trumpets this year. The Royal Northern Sinfonia celebrates its 60th anniversary this year. Yeah. And so they're going to have a whole load of different celebrations and put on a lot of concerts in addition to the ones that they already do. And they wanted to do a R&S Rocks night. Yeah. And again, celebrate Northeast music that's done pretty well over the last few years. And so we're going to rearrange maybe 30 or 40 minutes worth of our music for the orchestra, and it's going to be pretty immense as far as I'm concerned. I'm just going to be on cloud nine if I can hear myself. So sometimes you get really excited for these big gigs. Like we played the Royal Albert Hall, for example, a number of years ago now, and I was so keyed up for it. And just as soon as I started singing, I realised I couldn't really hear anything, and just spent the rest of the gig sweating over whether I was in tune and trying to sort it out and going this bit up, this bit down. No. So I'm going to be extra vigilant in the sound check. But yeah, we're playing field music. Are going to do the same and do Blonde, which is Beth Jeans Houghton, another really interesting Northeast artist. She is. Yeah, she's gonna be looking at her back catalogue, and I think she's got some new stuff coming out as well. So I think it's probably a good opportunity for us to play the newly commissioned song that we've done for
I was going to say, that's got to be part of it, hasn't it?
Yeah, and I think it to sort of it links up to all the other things that we've been talking about, because we knew it was for the Great Exhibition of the North. They wanted us to write a song about the North, and we knew it was going to be a fountain on the Tyne, so the Tyne is mentioned. But the song itself, North by Northeast, it's the chorus is. It says, "I couldn't tell you what it means, but I know that the compass reads north by northeast." And it's that idea of, there's something distinctive about the northeast or your town, wherever it might be, and you just can't put your finger on it exactly. Because when people have asked me about what it's like to be in the northeast, I think, well, what's it like to write about the northeast? And I think, well, there's, we've had an industrial heritage, whether it's steel or coals or further over, the mills and the post. I suppose we're talking about a post-industrial world where those big industries have become defunct, and we have to deal with it, and we have to deal with the visual aftermath and the economic aftermath, and other places in the country have also had that. So you could probably say the same thing about Wales, or you could say the same thing about somewhere in the southeast, far away from London. And so putting your finger on it is harder than you think. And I've often said I try and celebrate what we have and celebrate everyday things, and our songs are not about fantasy, because I get a lot out of life, and I want to try and put that into the songs. So this song is all about trying to wonder what it is about being in the north, and mentions a couple of northeast things within the song. It talks about being in my old instrumental band, me and the Twins, and making Super 8 films to be projected behind us, and rehearsing in Durham Street Studios at the Headland in Hartlepool. And it talks about Grey Street being, I think John Betjeman said it was one of the finest views in the world, unparalleled. And so in the song it says, Grey Street was Betjeman's for keeps, but I was brought up on Durham Street. And just the idea of these contrasting things that we have in the northeast, very grand things like Middlesbrough Town Hall next to ICI, and this, trying to find the beauty in that as well, which when I was at art college, those were the things that I was interested in painting, these kind of trying to transfigure them and make them into something else, and retain some of the things that I liked about them visually. And my father worked there as well, so it's kind of linked up in a family way as well. And so all of these things are I think are worth celebrating, but it's very difficult to define things, and sometimes when you do define things, they're not very accurate really. Things aren't black and white, and certainly not in the Newcastle sense if you're from Middlesbrough or from Sunderland. I don't know where I've got to, but I think it kind of that song in particular links up to all of the things that we've talked about in our conversation.
Will it have a commercial release at any point? Is it going to be out there to buy?
Yeah, well, as soon as I think on Friday, as soon as it is heard by the public, and the fountain does what it does, then people will be able to download it. So that'll be nice for people to hear it.
Excellent. We'll give it a spin on the programme next week.
Oh, please do. Thank you.
That'd be grand. And who's your tip for the World Cup, Mr. Smith?
Oh man, it's all gone to pot. I was like Germany, Spain, France, and Brazil. Obviously, looking at their lineups and their squads, you'd think they've got a great chance, but I have no idea anymore. I still think France will have played really quite mediocre football the other day and still won, which that doesn't bode well if they actually get firing. And I think Deschamps got quite a conservative way that he sets his team up, which didn't do them well in the last major championships. But I think they might come through. But I mean, you look at the football that Spain play, and it's absolutely mesmerising. And yet, they drew 3-3, but then they were against somebody who's a freak in footballing terms.
You see, what I took out of that match was that both Spain and Portugal pretty shaky at the back. Nothing to fear there.
I don't know if there's any. I mean, this is where you could link this up to football in general these days. We have a lot of flying wing backs and We're trying to develop, and as we should be, centre backs that can bring the ball out and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But blimey, there's some holes in these defences. And
Exactly.
I include England's own within there. So yeah, I am now, my brain's scrambled as to who it might be. But again, somebody like Germany, you just think, it's like don't annoy them. I think they're probably quite annoyed now.
Make them angry. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I've got Senegal in the BBC Tees World Cup sweepstakes, so I am backing the Lions of Teranga all the way in this competition. As far as I'm concerned, their name is on that trophy already.
Good luck.
Thanks. Paul, been a pleasure to speak to you as always. Thanks for doing this.
Thanks a lot. Cheers, Bob.
No problem. I will do the plugs. You can find out everything you need to know, essentially, about the Great Exhibition of the North at getnorth2018.com. Paul Smith from Maximo Park here on BBC Tees with me, Bob Fischer.